In this weekend's gospel, Jesus teaches us to see what is hidden in plain sight. So what is hidden in plain sight? On occasion, I find myself searching for my phone as I'm heading out the door, while I'm talking to my sister about my twin nephews on the very phone I am searching for. Sometimes we fail to see what is right in front of us, whether it be aspects of ourselves or the ways in which God is operating in our lives. As I reflect upon what hidden things Jesus may be trying to teach us this week, I found myself reflecting upon the theological concept of sacramentality. Everything, all creation, anything and everything we encounter in the day can be a sign that reveals the nature of God to us. A vast, starry night sky may reveal how small we are in a universe growing in complexity and permeated with God's love. A tiny flower growing through the crack in the sidewalk reveals the fragility, beauty, and sacredness of life. My distracted search for my phone may reveal the human need for continued connection, even as I'm already connected. Indeed, there is no way for us to be unconnected in our world. All of these experiences and more are opportunities of grace. They are little moments inviting us to turn our awareness to the divine, already incarnated in our midst. So God gifts us with many hidden things right before our eyes each day. I like to imagine a God who's constantly reaching out to us, trying to get our attention, and perpetually inviting us to learn, to love, and to grow. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus acts as a teacher for the disciples, and in this passage in particular, evokes the image of a kindergarten teacher for me. Jesus first celebrates God's unexpected actions in the world, favoring the little, humble, less significant ones over the wise, presumably knowledgeable ones with all the answers. Little ones, in different translations of this passage in English, is also translated as babes, infants, or little children. Then Jesus seems to address all of his disciples, including us, as he begins, "Come to me." It feels like we are all little ones being called to sit in the circle and listen to the lesson or story that Jesus is about to tell. Later in Matthew 19, Jesus uses the same phraseology as he says, "Let the little ones come to me," when some want to keep the children away. Matthew has commonly been considered the most Jewish of the Gospels. Jesus, depicted as a teacher, fits well within the Jewish tradition. Earlier in Matthew, Jesus provides instruction through the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is presented here as a teacher like Moses, teaching in 5 discourses throughout the Gospel, representing the 5 books of the Torah. The prophet Isaiah shares a vision of all people coming to God's holy mountain Zion for instruction in the 2nd chapter of Isaiah. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest mountain and raised above the hills. All nations shall stream toward it. Many peoples shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the Lord's mountain, to the house of the God of Jacob, that God may instruct us in God's ways and we may walk in God's paths. For from Zion shall go forth instruction. In Isaiah's vision, people are eager to learn God's ways, eager to hear the message being taught and ready to respond. This is every teacher's dream. We as disciples are called to be similarly eager to understand and follow Jesus' instruction. The imagery of a teacher giving instruction and the animal pulling a heavy load by means of a yoke across its shoulders are closely tied together in the Jewish imagination. In the wisdom literature, and in Sirach in particular, we find parallels with today's gospel. From Sirach. Enjoy the number of commonalities you'll hear with what we just heard. So come aside to me, you untutored, and take up lodging in the house of instruction. How long will you deprive yourselves of wisdom's food? How long endure such bitter thirst? I open my mouth and speak of her. Gain wisdom for yourselves at no cost. Take her yoke upon your neck, that your mind may receive her teaching. For she is close to those who seek her, and the one who is in earnest finds her. See for yourselves, I have labored only a little, but have found much. I think you can see a great deal of verbal similarities with this passage from Sirach and the gospel we just read. Wisdom literature draws upon the metaphor of the yoke for instruction. It's also worth noting that the image of the yoke is associated with the Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible. Instruction is like the yoke that guides the working animals and helps them to carry a heavy load. So Torah is associated with instruction and with wisdom. In fact, the book of Sirach contains similar themes to what we've seen in today's passage from Matthew. In Sirach, people are instructed to seek wisdom. As we are aware, wisdom is depicted as a woman who nourishes us from her table in Proverbs 9. Wisdom instructs us in the ways of God here. And wisdom was also present at the beginning of creation, the creation of the world, in Sirach 24. Also in Genesis 1, in the beginning of creation, God speaks and creation comes forth. In the Jewish imagination, Torah is that word that God speaks. And I'm sorry, the citation isn't showing. I think this is The Days of Creation by Shirley Rose, and it's from a synagogue in New York. So as you see the days of creation, in the beginning when God speaks on the first day, you have all the words, all the letters in Hebrew. It's the word coming forth, the Torah being visualized here. So the Torah, the word, and the wisdom are all present at the beginning of creation. As Christians, we are familiar also with the opening of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. We Christians, of course, identify Jesus as the Word who is present at the beginning with God in creation. So in our collective, we could say mystical imagination, we could say that Torah is instruction, is wisdom, is the Word, is Jesus. For Christians, is Jesus. A holy, mystical conflation of figures and imagery. We sit at the feet of this dense mystery and await instruction. again as kindergartners in the face of mystery, waiting for Jesus's message. And so we turn to Jesus's message for us in our reading from Matthew to take a closer look at the lesson. We hear, "Come, rest, be humble of heart. It's easy." Kati Oriana is a sister in formation in my community. When she reflected on this passage with me in preparation for this afternoon, she exclaimed that Jesus is a liar. It's not easy at all. I suspect many of us, at least at times, resonate with Kati's exclamation. Yet we long for rest and ease in our lives. We long for our burdens to be lifted. Jesus, come. A small sampling of some of the societal burdens that we are encountering in our world right now. The weather is unpredictable and extreme everywhere, it seems. Numbers of mass shootings, including over the recent holiday. Numbers of people dying of fentanyl overdose each day. I'm certain I'm not the only teacher or professor who wonders, how long until it's one of my students? How long until it's my school? One day this last semester, on my way to work, I saw 2 police cars detaining one of my students. The student was an international student, a person of color, and a Muslim. This student wishes me peace in greeting at the start of every class. Now, I live and I teach in the reddest part of a red state. So I was more than a little concerned. I stopped and waited a short distance away, just as a visible presence until after the police left. But there's so many other directions a simple situation like that could have gone, we are well aware. So many people carry untold numbers of heavy burdens. Where is the rest? Jesus, we are still looking for the easy part. Just as the opening verses include the unexpected twist of centering the little ones rather than those who are wise, Jesus surprises us again by presenting us with the idea that burdens can be made easy or light instead of heavy. Those laboring, those carrying heavy burdens are precisely the people whose suffering Jesus seeks to alleviate. Our ability to learn from Jesus seems to be the key. Are we ready to be good students, taking notes, doing our own personal work, which I like to call my homework? Are we absorbing the lessons Jesus is trying to teach us? If we desire to imitate Jesus here in these few verses, we see that Jesus begins by praising God for revealing God's ways to little ones, ordinary ones, the people of humble origins. Jesus then acknowledges his close relationship with God, whom Jesus makes known. We can know God through Jesus. It is the ordinary laborers Jesus calls to himself. If we are imitating Jesus, the program seems to be praise God, develop a close relationship with God, and hang out with and be the ordinary humble folks. We are then to be the ordinary humble little ones who come to Jesus for rest. Super difficult for some of us. Who aspires to be humble? Everything in our society tells us to strive to be the best, to have the most, to run from illness, weakness, and vulnerability. Yet Jesus tells us here that we need to come to him humbly and be humble like he is. It even appears that we cannot have the rest we crave without humility. Embracing humility means letting go of all the accolades, titles, or positions that make us seem more important than others. Pursuing a humble heart suggests developing an immunity to the swelling of the head that can be a symptom of receiving too much praise or adulation. Remember, Jesus modeled directing our praise and gratitude to God. Humility means a stripping away of privilege that insulates us from discomfort and pain. Cultivating humility also suggests releasing expectations or entitlement that prevents us from enlivening our gratitude. It is in the letting go that allows us to fully embrace humility and lets us find our rest and peace. If we are not busy running away from humility, we might have a chance to find that inner calm. Jesus claims that accepting this instruction is an easy yoke to bear. I have heard it said that a yoke could be shaped to fit the neck and shoulders of the oxen. The yoke was designed to help them bear their burden comfortably and as safely as possible. Jesus' yoke is his teaching. This comparison between the yoke and Jesus' instruction hints that Jesus' message for us is tailored, shaped, and especially designed to be for us. It is reassuring to think that Jesus is trying to lighten the burdens we carry. We've been playing with this teaching, learning metaphor. School is out for the summer. It's a time for students and teachers to rest from study, lessons, and grading. It's a time for families, if they have the resources, to enjoy a vacation. Perhaps this time of rest in the natural rhythm of the year can serve as a reminder or even a sign that we are called to let go and make room for rest. Then the sacramentality of summer can be a graced experience of God's loving care. And I always like to leave us with a few questions. So, who is an example of humility for you? What about their life is attractive? Why do people underrate humility? What might a collective humility of heart look like? What burdens are you called to let go of? Thank you. May we enjoy the sacramentality of summer.